welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. I'll be your astrologer today. Happy Tuesday, everybody. I hope your week is off to a really great start. This is going to be my video that I'm doing on Venus's trek through the sign of Libra. I'm calling this video Give Peace a Chance. If you guys like my content and you want to see more of it, make sure you click the bell button below and you are subscribed. Give me a thumbs up and drop me a comment and let me know where you're tuning in from and how you're feeling about this shift with Venus. Such welcomed change in terms of like relationships. I'm sure you guys have seen my astro weather. I touched on Venus through the 12 signs. If you guys haven't already seen that, check that out because I did that for you guys on Sunday to let you know where this sweetness is going to be taking place in your life. Really important because Venus is also the ruler of the South Node, so we're going to be dealing with a lot of South Node lessons, and eventually Venus will make contact with the South Node. I also touch on this in my November horoscopes. I forget what month we're in. I touched on this in my November horoscopes, so you guys can find more on that there as well. I took you guys through that transit for the 12 signs for the month. All right, so the dates that Venus is going to be in the sign of Libra will be from November 8th through December the 4th. And Venus is the planet of love, relationships, values, money, resources, partnerships, style, and comfort. So really nice shift, right? This is really the first time since the nodes changed signs earlier this year that Venus is moving through one of her ruling signs. Venus has associations both with Taurus as well as Libra, but this is a very different energetic shift than I think what we have been feeling in recent months. And Libra is a cardinal air sign, so it is active, it's acting on love and relationships and diplomacy, balance and fairness. So as we see Venus go through this sign, likely we may see more of this out in the world. But the key here is to really allow peace a chance. I'm going to take you guys through all of the individual transits that really catch my eye for this shift. And obviously, those of you guys who are going to be affected the most are going to be those of you guys who are either a Taurus or a Libra rising, because you're ruled by Venus. So when Venus changes signs, you're going to feel that very, very much so. But if you have any other personal planets in the sign of Libra, you will be experiencing a conjunction with Venus, which can bring a little bit more sweetness, balance, fairness, and more relationship themes. Now, for me, one of the biggest things that kind of comes up as I took a look at the transits of Venus, I kept asking myself going, where's the love, right? Where is the love? Although Venus in Libra is a really wonderful placement for relationships and harmony, beauty, style, right? Unfortunately, Venus is not really receiving a lot of support throughout this trek, and I'll show it to you guys in just a second. But one thing I want you guys to kind of keep in the back of your mind is that Venus is the dispositor of planets in Taurus, okay? Because Venus rules Taurus. So as Venus is moving through the skies, Venus's aspects that she's making or the experiences that she's having is a reflection of things that are going on to or involving planets in the sign of Taurus. So as we're starting to see planets come into opposition with Uranus, which represents sudden fluctuation and change, perhaps we're going to start to see where there can be relationship shifts. Now, really the big ones for me are going to be like that new moon in Scorpio, Mars in opposition to Uranus, the sun in opposition to Uranus, and these are in financial signs. So we see Taurus, which represents banking, resources, physical, tangible goods, and Scorpio, which represents money owed, borrowed, loans, or other people's resources. So one of the things that I was thinking about was, as these oppositions are taking place, it is going to be showing us where there can be some intensity revolving around give and take in our lives, our relationship to our banking institutions, our relationship to our resources, to our physical material things, and also all the complications of physical material things on relationships. And so we might see how diplomacy is really needed, fairness and balance is really needed to not get heated and maybe say or do some things that we might regret. Now also, we're not going to be seeing a lot of support because as Venus goes through Libra, she's not receiving any positive aspects from other planets. In fact, really the only support she's going to be receiving is a very short-lived sextile to Mercury in Sagittarius. However, Mercury here is in its fall, so maybe its optimism is a little too confident. Maybe we're a little bit too idealistic that things can get better, that we can smooth things over, and that's a very short-lived sextile. Outside of that, because Venus squares Capricorn, Venus inconjuncts Pisces, Venus opposes Aries, Venus, inconjuncts or quincunxes Taurus, there's a lot of blind spots, okay? Anytime we see opposition, it's challenge. Anytime we see inconjunct or quincunx, there is a blind spot. So we're going to experience a lot of Neptunian themes throughout this particular transit of not seeing something or not receiving the support or something going missing or something dissolving. We are also going to be dealing with how radical shifts or transformations in our resources impacts relationships. And we start to see where materialism or obsession or fixation over having something or someone, or maybe changes in resources, the impact that that potentially has on our relationships. So I'll take you guys through that. I'll show that to you. But I was like, man, where's the love? Venus is not really getting as much support. Kind of bummed out because we really could have used this in light of what's happened over the recent last couple of months with the Venus retrograde and some pretty gnarly squares to Uranus. Definitely saw some shakeups and some breakups by the end of summer. And then we saw Venus moving through, through Virgo, where it was having to learn to kind of heal, clean things up. Maybe it was like a little like longing for love, especially with the oppositions to Saturn and Neptune. So I am optimistic that when we get Venus into, let's say, Capricorn, Sagittarius, Pisces, it may be a little bit easier, although maybe even through Sagittarius is a little too optimistic because of the squares. But, with astrology, there's always something coming. So I don't say this to be negative, Nancy, but know that when Venus gets into Pisces in the new year and it moves through its exaltation, I do think that we're going to have a lot more support and a lot more strength. Obviously, planets are gonna behave differently, or they're gonna perform differently based off of its strength in any given sign. Now, something else that comes up for me as well, I kept thinking about how the finale of this transit of Venus in Libra is quite dramatic. We are going to see a conjunction to the South Node, which can represent reflecting on the past or the past coming back, or reflecting on relationships that have kind of dissolved, right? It'll be at 24. It'll quincunx Neptune, so that's even more of kind of a blurry line or a blind spot in relationships or values. And then it's going to come in for the kill shot, and it's going to square Pluto. This got me thinking about Romeo and Juliet. What comes to mind for me with that Venus South Node, square Pluto aspect is I was thinking, about Romeo and Juliet and that scene. I don't know if you guys have seen. I'm sure you've seen multiple variations of this particular play, but one of my favorites is the 1998 version by Baz Luhrmann. And I was thinking about that one scene where it's the beginning of the movie and you see Tybalt going back and forth with Benvolio. Do you guys remember that? So where they're kind of having the duel in the parking lot, and Tybalt says to Benvolio, like, "What drawn and talk of peace? I hate the word as I hate hell, all Montagues and thee." And basically, to put it in layman's terms, Tybalt, who happens to be a Capulet, says, "What? You've pulled out your sword to fight these worthless servants? Turn around, Benvolio, and look at who's trying to kill you." Benvolio says, "I'm only trying to keep the peace. Either way, put away your sword or use it to help me fight." And Tybalt says, "What? You take out your sword and you talk of peace? I hate the word peace as I hate all Montagues. Let's fight." So it's interesting because on one hand, they're trying to kind of call for peace and being like, "Peace, let's have peace." And he goes, "Well, you're saying you want peace, but you're pulling out a sword." Eventually leading to, the story of Romeo and Juliet and their star-crossed love, ending in probably one of the most famous romantic tragedies in all of, historical literature. How hate and lack of diplomacy leads to a deeper hate and disdain and an unveiling of an ancient feud. Very Pluto and Capricorn, right? You guys remember the feud between the two families we end up kind of seeing this like romance, and then towards the end, you know, they're supposed to be married, and one ends up getting poisoned, and then Romeo ends up, you know, taking his own life at the end of the story. I'm not going to say like that I'm that I'm going to give you guys a heads up or insight in terms of blowing the story. I'm sure you guys have seen it, right? You guys have seen it, or you've read it, so you know the ending. But I think of the drama of Venus on the South Node, and I think of the square to Pluto, and it reminds me very much of this. Because Venus with the square to Pluto is intense, it brings power struggles. We see obsession and fixation with love, but also a desire for depth and transformation through acts of love. And it is possible to really take a look at the need for balance in relationships. And it can also show us where we can be a little bit more emotionally resilient. Now, with that being said, the final act, right, with that South Node conjunct Venus, could be about letting go. And for me, the final act of love, right, is all about letting go. Letting go is often considered the final act of love because it signifies a willingness to put someone else's well-being and happiness ahead of your own desires or attachments. So love in its purest form is not about possession or control, but caring for someone's growth, happiness, and best interests. So something we might see throughout this transit, especially towards the end, is more respect for others. You know, letting go allows the other person to feel freedom and allowing them to make their own choices and decisions. Unconditional love is definitely going to be a theme, I think. You know, letting go as a demonstration of unconditional love and loving someone regardless of whether or not they choose to be with you, and following their own path and making their own choices, even if they differ from your own. You love them without imposing conditions. That's a big one because I think that we're learning right now with the South Node in Libra that love cannot be conditional. This will give us opportunities to practice selflessness, emotional healing, because obviously letting go gives us the opportunity to release what's no longer healthy or fulfilling. And it'll allow individuals across the board to heal, grow, and find happiness elsewhere rather than staying in a situation that is causing harm or unhappiness. Now, this could lead to empowerment. Definitely we see that with Pluto themes. You know, letting go can be very empowering, and it can give us the opportunity to discover ourselves and our true potential. But it can also empower us to focus on our own growth and well-being. And I think we're also going to be taking a look at themes revolving around respect for boundaries. Okay, because love that lets go respects boundaries and limits of both individuals. It acknowledges that everyone has their own comfort zone and emotional needs. Now, this is really important because Libra is all about balance within relationships and harmony and diplomacy. With the South Node being there, it's harder to find that. We're really feeling that charge of the North Node in Aries where people are wanting to be reactionary. They want to fight. They want to be independent. They want to be more assertive. So this might bring up more of the, Pluto square the nodes. Granted, it's fading, so it's starting to kind of break off now that Pluto is at 28 degrees. It's about a 4-degree square, but until we get this out of a 10-degree orb, we're still feeling the pressure. So wherever Pluto is in your chart, it's basically showing this re-evaluation of power, this breakdown, this regeneration, and likely you're starting to feel Pluto's grip again because Pluto's hitting 29 degrees here pretty soon. Now, if we look back in time, just recently in the month of October, we had a whole slew of planets that came into conjunction with the South Node. They touched on the South Node and then they squared Pluto. So I want you guys to think back to what was going on around October 4th, 2023. This is when we saw Mars come into conjunction with the South Node. Maybe we were choosing not to be indecisive, not to be angry, not to be too reactionary, or maybe even too passive. Obviously, Mars in Libra can have a tendency to be very driven when it comes to relationships, but we might have found that that drive was actually leading to some power struggles and not allowing us to come into this North Node in Aries where we are kind of forging our own path. So it's been my experience with planets on the South Node in October that there was a sense of learning to let things go, but also not always being able to be diplomatic, not always being able to be understanding, and it showed us perhaps where we were like a little too passive or a little too comfortable. Now, on the 18th of October, we also saw the Sun and Mercury come into conjunction with the South Node as well. And so that kind of represented this letting go of the idea that we have to be so focused on relationships or so focused on fairness or, being politically correct or trying to be maybe even too considerate. And that was happening right around the time of the eclipse as well. So we saw that eclipse that was in Libra, right around, I think it was 21 degrees. And then we saw planets come into conjunction with the South Node. So there was lots of people probably collectively thinking and talking about past relationships, past situations involving other people, maybe really finally letting go of thinking or looking back into the past. And so all of those planets touched on the South Node where it was remembering but releasing. And then it came into a square with Pluto. And maybe there was like this awareness that's like, you know what, that wasn't necessarily the best relationship for me, or that actually didn't benefit me, or I felt like maybe I wasn't really being my authentic self. So you'll see something similar towards the end of this square, at the end of this transit, where Venus comes into conjunction with the South Node, and then it comes into a square with Pluto. Very interesting, because right after that, Venus will go into Scorpio, and it reminds me once again of that scene where, we're trying to kind of focus on peace, and then somebody goes, no, I hate peace, I don't want peace, let's fight. And then Venus will go into Scorpio, where there is big changes and transformation in love. But that's a story for next month. So let's go ahead and take this through the transits for the next month or so. I want to touch on each of the individual days that kind of catch my eye. And we're going to start here first with November 8th. So this is the day that Venus enters into Libra. Boy, oh boy, being a Libra rising myself, I just have literally been telling myself for the last 2 or 3 months, like, you just got to get to November. When you get to November, things are going to get a lot easier. So I'm personally looking forward to it, because I do believe that relationships and harmony is going to be possible throughout this transit. We might start to see also that there is a sense of getting more so in balance in relationships. So if you've been questioning where's the love, or who's got my back, or where is my support going to be coming from, or if you're looking for new clients, if you're looking for new partnerships, if you're looking for new friends, if you're wanting to kind of smooth something over, it is possible throughout this transit that this can kind of come through. I always like to look at ingress charts, because when a planet ingresses in the aspects that it makes right off the bat, for me, I think that that's going to kind of give me some insight as to how the entire transit is going to go. That's just my technique. So, to each their own. But I think about, like I said, how, the transit ends in a very dramatic way. Well, it starts in a dramatic way as well, although you may not quite realize it or see it very clearly. When Venus moves into Libra, it's going to go at 0 degrees, which is one of the cardinal points. So these are the markers of the 4 seasons, regardless of which hemisphere you live in. And these are generally pretty, powerful degrees. 0 degrees is the purest form of that sign. So we are Libra, 0 degrees, learning how to find balance, learning how to relate, learning how to be a partner. And what's interesting is that Venus will immediately come into an inconjunct, or what we would call a quincunx, with Saturn. Saturn is now direct in Pisces. Saturn in Pisces just generally represents all of the limitations, maybe karmically, maybe from past lives, maybe collectively, and things that are holding us back. I liken Saturn in Pisces to, if you guys have ever gone like bungee jumping, right? Raise your hand if you're crazy enough to have done that. I did that probably like 10 years ago. I lived at the time in Los Angeles, and I did the 7-mile hike that they take to the bridge to nowhere, and then they kind of hook you up, and then you can bungee jump off of the bridge, which is right above like a running stream. Brutal hike both ways. Would not recommend, but definitely worth it. Definitely worth it. But I remember getting up on the platform, and I was hooked up and everything was great. And there was like a several-foot platform that you would then jump off of. Nobody told me that when you get up there and you swing your leg over and you're getting ready to, to get onto the platform, that there is an invisible wall there that literally will not allow you to throw your leg over the other side, because everything in your body is saying, hi, you're not supposed to be up here doing this. This is absolutely insane. And then your knees lock, unless you're like a daredevil. So I remember sitting there for several minutes being like, I literally cannot move my body. There's this invisible wall that I cannot penetrate. Very Saturn in Pisces. something that's holding us back that we cannot quite see, especially at 0 degrees. So I encourage you guys to pay attention to what happens on the 8th, because you may find that there is something that is holding you back or limiting you in some way. An inconjunct aspect is not exactly an opposition, but it's certainly not a trine. Okay, so we're not seeing the aspects of either one. So it represents kind of this in between, something that you need to reconcile, and an itch that you cannot scratch. Now, when Venus is in conjunct Saturn, it is an aspect that creates tension between desire for commitment and structure in relationships and the need for personal freedom and independence. So it can lead to a sense of restriction in romantic endeavors, i.e. not the best day to be like, I'm getting engaged, or I'm committing to this relationship, or I'm making this investment, right? Venus through the lens of Libra is definitely going to be relationship oriented. So even if you're not looking for a partner, it can be about your relationship to other people or other things. This also makes me kind of feel like this might be for some of you guys looking around being like, yeah, this is just not feeling in balance for me, or this doesn't feel fair, or this feels limiting. It doesn't feel good. And like, what's wrong? You know, anybody who's got significant Libra placement or 7th house placement, you know that you can kind of look at something and see where it's kind of off balance, and you'll kind of go and tweak it, move it around. You will feel that there is opportunity within the Libra area to make some changes and add some beauty, but does it feel right? Does the relationship seem like it's good timing? Does it seem like there's something that's keeping you from committing or investing, or are you holding back in some way? So you're going to feel some limitation. Then on the 13th, we are going to see, there we go, Venus and Mercury will begin to sextile one another. Okay, so like I said, this is the only support really that Venus gets throughout this entire transit, is a very brief sextile. Sextiles are 60-degree angles. It's representing support and some kind of ease. So, Mercury is about communication. It's about travel. It's about writing, emails, texts, and it's about ideas. And, unfortunately, like I said, Mercury is going to be moving through a sign where it is going to be having some difficulty. The positive of Mercury in Sag is that it can be optimistic. It can be trying to find the silver lining. It can be encouraging and very spontaneous and very fun. But the problem is that this is a very short-lived sextile. You'll only have it for a couple days. And this is going to be happening in the midst of a very intense boiling point new moon in Scorpio, with Mars and all these planets that oppose Uranus. So there is going to be a sense of being like, well, that kind of went to shit, or that blew up, or that thing didn't work, or this fight happened. And so maybe Venus sextile Mercury is kind of being like, okay, well, what's the silver lining here, right? What have I learned from this situation? What's the bigger picture of what's kind of taking place? But I'm not too thrilled about the fact that Mercury is still kind of feeling a square to Saturn. So the very little support it gets, I don't know if that's good enough, but you may find some encouragement or some positivity or some support that's coming from the Sagittarius energy of your chart that is sextiling with Venus for a brief couple days. Now, then we see on the 16th, we're going to see Venus in conjunct Jupiter retrograde in Taurus. Now, remember what I said, guys. Venus is the ruler of these placements. So the opposition during that new moon is also bringing up the friction in relationships in regards to balance of relationships and resources. But Jupiter, right, the most benefic, I think, next to Venus of all of the planets. Jupiter represents growth and abundance in the sign of Taurus, life, more resources, and perhaps laws revolving around banking, finances, anything in regards to global money matters, food, right, environmental things. And Jupiter is retrograde, so it's turned inward. We're reflecting on what moves we need to make, what we need to be growing, what we need to be believing in, or maybe even switching up in terms of our values. One thing that I will say is I get a little like eerie about that 8 degrees of Taurus because that is a degree that does deal with black magic. Believe in that or not, but I do feel like there is something that's going on where Some of the events that are taking place the week leading up to this particular ingress is going to be a lot of scare tactics in regards to money and resources, to be getting, people or individuals maybe worked up about, their security, their stability. Eights also represent where something ends or where something dies off or where something transforms or it transitions. So to watch Venus come into an inconjunct with Jupiter does make me feel like there is something that's not quite kosher in regards to relationships or values. Now, this inconjunct is going to bring a tendency to go to extremes in love and relationships. And I think this is because, 8 is kind of like all or nothing. Extremes or kind of swings might also be Jupiter because it makes things bigger. And I think we're going to be swinging between overindulgence and a desire for freedom. And we're going to really need to focus on balancing the need for expansion with the need for stability on a certain issue. So eights can also be dealing with taxes, money owed. I think a huge topic over the next month or two is going to be about quite literally our bank statements and our interest rates, our insurance rates. It's going to be about mortgage rates, lending, everything in regards to investments and what we're putting into things and what we're getting out of it. Whether that's a relationship, a job, right? It's really going to depend on your own personal chart. But that inconjunct, I think, is going to be showing all of us where there is some stuff going on behind the scenes spiritually that's trying to disrupt relationships. And really, if you peel back the curtain, it's all going to be about what relationships or alliances are being made for financial reasons. That's the key, okay? Now, when we get to the 22nd of November, we are going to see Venus come into an opposition with Chiron. Okay, so here's Venus opposing Chiron in Aries, which is also retrograde. And I think this could definitely bring a bit of an ouch. So just make a mental note, really like the 22nd through the 24th, because we'll see the moon come through and trigger this as well. So when Venus in Libra and at 15, it can represent two situations, more than one person. It could represent words, communication, media, texts, phone calls, emails. Opposes Chiron, which is the wounded healer, we're likely to see some wounding in love or relationships. So because Venus represents relationships and how we give or receive affection, and Chiron is all about healing, this is going to be symbolizing issues that are cropping up that are about emotional wounds. So there can be a feeling of woundedness or vulnerability in matters of love and relationships. And it's possible that we're feeling like we're carrying emotional scars from past experiences and that it's coming up for us mentally. Maybe we're seeing reminders on social media. Maybe we're talking about, where we've had issues in the past. This can also lead to some relationship insecurities and fear of rejection in relationships. We know that Chiron was kind of cast out of society, right? He was considered like fringe. So Venus opposed Chiron can definitely be bringing up these themes of where, we might be sensitive to perceived slights or emotional wounds, leading to a reluctance to fully open up to somebody else. Venus, after all, is a flower, so it's about blooming and opening. So as we see this opposition, we might feel like, oh, somebody said something or did something that, brought up a wound for me. And like now I'm kind of, isolating myself or closing myself off. Now, oppositions are relational. So it is definitely very similar to the axis of Aries and Libra. And Aries is where we take action, and Libra is where we tend to something, or we love something, or we support something. So this is a wonderful time to be getting support from another person. Like those of you guys who are like, I'm looking for, a partner who's emotionally available. I'm looking for a new therapist, or I'm looking for a new friend. We may find that people can come in through this experience and they can help us heal our wounds, because so much of the opposition between Venus and Chiron is healing through love. So while there's emotional wounds that will be present, it also suggests that there's potential for healing through relationships. And we might find that deep, empathetic and nurturing connections with others can help address our emotional wounds throughout this transit. Now, relationship patterns are going to come up. It could be that we're seeing reoccurring themes of wounding. It might mean that we're finding that we're attracting partners that are reflecting their own wounds, especially because Libra is about reflecting something back. It's, connected to mirrors after all. And so if we do see projection or reflections going on, we might be finding that it's triggering our own past emotional pains and providing opportunities for healing and growth. Now, I like Venus opposed Chiron for romantic expression. I think that this is great for representing creativity and aesthetics because that's what Venus does. And the opposition to Chiron can fuel artistic creation as a means of processing emotions and healing. So it's a good time to be engaging in artistic or creative pursuits, or art therapy might be something else that's really wonderful. Writing down your feelings, working through some of this stuff. Thankfully, this opposition happens while we've got a moon and Neptune in a trine to the sun in Scorpio. So, taking a long hot bath, doing some journaling, doing some meditation, forgiveness, right? Forgiveness can be a huge theme here as well. I'm hoping that this is going to allow a lot of people in this particular transit to release and let something go. And then finally, I think really this is going to be about teaching us more about compassion and empathy. We may find that this is allowing us to possess a deep well of compassion and empathy for other people, especially those who have experienced their own emotional wounds. And it can make us more so highly sensitive and in tune to our partners. I found myself, when things have been coming up recently with the South Node in Libra, rather than jumping into the Aries where I take action, I'm trying to take a step back and go, well, I'm going to put myself in the other person's position. How did that make them feel? And trying to be understanding and empathetic even when other people are not so kind, which is a really difficult thing for anybody to do. But that's been my move throughout some of these transits in particular. So I'm anticipating that's really going to be needed around the end of November. And also self-acceptance, right? Chiron is in Aries, which is about healing the wounds of self, but it's about a greater acceptance of self, and it encourages individuals to work on their own emotional healing and then to love and accept themselves, scars and all. All right, so let's move to the 26th, where we're going to see yet another inconjunct. And like I said, these are the blind spots, guys, okay? So, and I actually think we're going to feel it this time around. So on the 26th, we're going to see Venus hit 20. So that's another Scorpio degree. Interesting, right? We saw one inconjunct that was happening in a Scorpio degree when it was Jupiter at 8 and Venus at 8. And now we have another inconjunct at a Scorpio degree. Okay, so this is where Venus is going to inconjunct Uranus. I do feel like we'll feel it because the moon's going to be there, so that's going to be creating like a trigger of sorts. But there's going to be something else interesting that's going to happen as well. We will see like a yod come through this. So Venus will inconjunct Uranus with the moon, so this will be creating a yod, right? So we've got sun, as we've got moon Uranus, so emotional changes, emotional reactions, emotional or financial shifts, collectively all of us going through some kind of shock and surprise. In a sextile to Neptune about what's dissolving. Okay, so here's the sextile. And then it's all forming a yod to pretty much the South Node and Venus. I'll work with about a 2-4 degree orb, 2 usually, but you're gonna feel this building. So that's gonna make Venus in the South Node a real focal point. So this is when we're starting to kind of tap into Venus coming into conjunction with the South Node. Couple things that come to mind. One is the fact that, it's really reiterating, let this thing go, or try to resolve, try to find peace, try to be the mediator, try to find balance. But I also think it's really encouraging us to make major transformations in relationships because it's at a 20. The other thing that comes to mind for me also is that it's coming into conjunction to this recent eclipse that we had in Libra. So if you guys think back to, mid-October, we had a solar eclipse in Libra at 21 degrees, I think. So it's coming into conjunction. This is the last planet to activate that eclipse. So there's been a lot of action in the Libra area of your chart. Now Venus comes through and it's trying to add some sweetness, or it's trying to potentially smooth something over, or find, an opportunity to find balance with what's been happening with that eclipse in your chart. And then finally, the quincunx, or the inconjunct, to the moon and Uranus. So for me, I'm really focusing on Venus, quincunx, Uranus, but really it's all kind of, together in conjunct because Venus rules Taurus. But when we see Venus quincunx the moon, it's harder to emotionally relate and show affection or discuss relationships or values or find balance. But when we see Venus quincunx Uranus, this is going to be bringing up a struggle between the desire for stability and for excitement and change in relationships. Now, this aspect can lead to a push-pull dynamic in some relationships. That is possible. Remember, like I said, it's trying to reconcile something. So I think for a lot of people, it's about physically giving something up. A person, a habit, it can be a possession, it can be also, I think a lot of people looking around going like, why am I still valuing this thing, this person, this job, this relationship? Is it time for me just to release it and let it go? Like I said, the final act of love is about releasing something. Intuitively, I also know that because Venus is the ruler of the South Node and it's connected to all of these placements in Taurus, I'm pretty damn sure that a lot of people are going to look around and they're going to start to realize or recognize who has their back in times of need. A big example of this, I think, is going to be a lot of people looking at how banks are responding to some of these financial kind of strange happenings that have been going on. Issues with deposits, issues with people being able to get their direct deposits in, for being able to withdraw things, for being able to move money. It may push some people to go like, you know what, I don't want to partner with this bank anymore. I don't want to use this exchange anymore. It may also bring up some issues in relationships where when you strip away, right, South Node Venus, all of the superficial things, when you strip away the expensive cars, when you strip away the I would say like the veneer, Venus in Libra can be the veneer of relationships, and it doesn't look so pretty, or it requires some work, or it's a little challenging, or maybe we start to see that there's some like pettiness going on in a relationship, or some major financial challenges. Do some people throw in the towel and say, this is too much for me, I quit? Or are you going to see people double down and go, okay, we're going to have to work a little bit harder? Certainly, we're going to see a lot of difference of opinions, and that's really what the quincunxes between Libra and Taurus are in relationships about values. I mean, you're going to hear, husbands and wives, or partnerships, or relationships, or business partners, probably feeling a little conflicted about, where do we trim the fat in our spending habits? Or, am I supposed to be responsible for your debt? Or, what you are purchasing, I really feel like it's not a value of mine, so why are we doing this together? So you'll see conflict revolving around, I think, a difference of opinion on values and the impact that it'll have on relationships. So really look to the 26th as yet another day where there is just more challenges maybe going on with people maybe coming to terms and having some real big realizations. That's like, maybe we don't have the same belief and philosophy. Maybe we're not aligned when it comes to things. And I think that's setting the stage for Venus coming into conjunction with the South Node. So that's going to be happening here, and that'll be at 24 degrees. So it'll be right before the nodes change degrees. That'll be on November 29th. Venus conjunct the South Node at 24 degrees of Libra. Now, something I noticed that keeps coming up a lot, and you'll see this in my video on Thursday as well, is there's a lot of weird Neptune stuff that's going to be happening over the next month or two. We're going to see a number of degrees hit 24. We're going to see in conjuncts or quincunxes to Neptune. And 24 degrees is a Pisces degree. This is where things go missing, or people go crazy, or things dissolve, or some kind of secret maybe emerges, or something like vanishes or disappears. If you guys go back and watch my videos I've done over the last month, I talk a lot about people going, where is my money? Well, now you guys understand why I was saying that. This is another day. So Venus, which rules money, and it's also the ruler of Jupiter and Uranus, is going to sit on the South Node. So this can be where the past comes calling, right? You hear from the past in some way, or there's some reminder of a past relationship, or somebody secretly, mysteriously resurfaces or disappears, or ghosts. But the quincunx, or the inconjunct to Neptune, really got me thinking about where there can be illusions in love. There can be grand ideas of what love could be or should be, and we end up kind of like putting something or someone on a pedestal in some way. We see that with Venus-Neptune aspects. And perhaps feel dissatisfied or abandoned, or that we're not getting what we need in terms of relationships. And so there can be this need to release or relationship breakdown. Now, this will dissolve relationships, I think, because of lack of transparency, right? Because of the in conjunct to Neptune. Releasing indecisiveness in relationships, perhaps questioning why we put so much value or stock in something or someone. And when Venus in conjuncts Neptune, there's a sense of confusion and idealizing relationships. And it's difficult to see the true nature of partners or money. And it's really difficult setting healthy boundaries. Now, what is Venus in Libra? This is relationships, harmony, style, art. It can also be about marriages or, devotion. And we've got Pisces, which is going to be about organized religion. It could be about hospitals. It could be about prisons. It could be about hidden things, secret societies, things that go on kind of, behind the scenes. Saturn is there as well. Okay, so these are two really interesting planets to have in the sign of Pisces, because it does talk about some shadow government or, whoever is kind of pulling the puppet strings behind closed doors. Likely we may see some people step away from relationships for some unforeseen reason or a reason that's not disclosed. It can mean that, there's getting ready to be some disclosure about why this is potentially happening. I don't know, we'll see. This will be happening in the midst also of the very first of many Mercury square Neptunes. So there's going to be a lot of miscommunication, misunderstandings, people falsely representing things, some fogginess, some things that are just definitely like not clear. And I want to read to you guys the Sabian symbol for 24 degrees of Libra. We're going to read 25. Well, is it 24? Hold on, let's see. I want to double check this. So... yeah, it looks like it's going to be 24 and change. Yeah. So we're going to read 25 of Libra. Those of you guys who don't have your Sabian symbols, you can check out my Amazon link below. I have a whole book list if you want to use this. Okay, so we're looking at Libra 25. This is page 237. And it says, information in the symbol of an autumn leaf. The keyword is tact. The theme is a revelation. The symbol speaks to imagination and to an ability to understand the subtle messages in all things and events through a sensitivity to pattern. The image of information in the symbol of an autumn leaf emphasizes the importance of observing and paying attention to detail. The suggestion here is that intelligence is basically the capacity to understand how things can be used to achieve the desired means and benefit the self and others. The emphasis on this degree is an understanding that mutual and necessary interdependence of man and his world. At its highest, it represents adaptability, intuition, natural ability to see beyond the surface of appearances and comprehend the ultimate meaning and purpose of all things, and an unwavering commitment to the highest good in all situations. Watch for a tendency to get lost in inconsequential detail or lose perspective in foolish flights of fancy. The accent is on interpretation. Translating information from one medium or language to another may require your time or attention. Your greatest advantage lies in focusing your objective and being diplomatic and getting your message across. Guard against believing something because it's too difficult to understand and that it's more important or has more value. Avoid confusing others with irrelevant details and talking about things that they cannot relate to or have no interest in. One thing I will say is that it's going to be hard to have clarity because we're going to have Mercury square Neptune. So I know that this doesn't really have anything to do with Venus, but it'll make more sense when you guys watch my Mercury and Sag video on Thursday. I'm going to talk a lot about how there's going to be a lot of getting lost in translation. In cultural, divide, in religious divide, in international kind of diplomacy issues. And so I do feel like some people with Venus conjunct the South Node might be kind of like, well, do I really want to get involved in this, that, and the other? It's none of my business, or it's too difficult to kind of comprehend. Yeah, that could definitely happen. But I also feel like being able to tap into the symbolism, right? The symbol on an autumn leaf is about being able to see beyond things that are just superficial or things that are just surface kind of details. I talk about how Venus in Libra can kind of almost be like a veneer. So part of the Venus conjunct the South Node can maybe be about like removing that feeling of needing to be diplomatic or, too understanding and not being nice or playing nice for the sake of just everybody getting along, or being too politically correct because you don't want to cause like ripples or waves, maybe. But like I said, that 24 degrees is going to be the purest form of Pisces. So when we look at, the sign of Libra, relationships, harmony, our ability to align with other people, when it hits 24, we're going to see disappearances. We're going to see things that we lose, relationships that are lost, but also Venus rules Jupiter and Uranus, money lost, possessions lost, what we potentially lose in the face of challenges in relationships or upheaval in financial situations, things that are secret, unexplored, fears or phobias maybe within relationships. But also I think of Venus as being money. The inconjuncts to Neptune is going to be talking about pharmaceutical related matters, hospital related matters. Just like thinking about like the interview I watched, it was really long. I watched most of it, the interview between Elon Musk and Joe Rogan. If you guys haven't seen that, I recommend watching it. But it was so interesting to finally hear somebody come out and be like, yeah, one of the issues that we saw with the pandemic was issues with ventilators. And we think about so much discussion about getting more ventilators, having ventilators, but also the lethal combination of some of the medications and putting people on ventilators, which in turn actually negatively impacted their health. There's all kinds of information about it. It's out there. And I, for one, think that these particular inconjuncts to Neptune may be bringing up information revolving around, well, why were hospitals getting paid so much for, deceased patients? Why were they giving them medications that they knew may not potentially assist or, prolong their life? Like, why was this going on? And what were the financial incentives, right, behind that? Medications, pharmacies, pharmacists, religious nature, isolated places, religious institutions, oil, gas, drugs, photography, false, insincere, counterfeit. Counterfeit. South Node Venus, quincunx to Neptune. Maybe we're going to hear more about the war on cash because of, issues relating to, drugs and trade. And more about research, laboratory, science, doctors, the sea, drowning, poisons, right? So I wonder if this is going to be about food and poisons in food. Hearing more about the health of our oceans, laws and regulations connecting to that and how it's having an impact, overfishing, overtaking. So much about Pluto, Venus square can be about obsession, fixation, greed. So where we're taking too much, right? Anyway, then we've got on December 3rd, we're going to see Venus square Pluto at 28 degrees of Capricorn. In my mind, from the second Venus conjuncts the South Node, we're already feeling the Venus square Pluto. And that can definitely be bringing up some intense exchanges in regards to relationships, some obsession, fixation, dictatorship almost with Pluto and the square. I mean, at least we have Venus that's in a superior position. So Venus is challenging Pluto. So love, harmony, coming together, opting for diplomacy can be challenging those who are in power, who are trying to see to it that there is more war, there is more terror, there is more corruption, there is more evil doing. And I think Venus here is basically saying that we have to give peace a chance. We have to practice really being focused on relationships and diplomacy. In the midst of all this, we are going to see a really challenging full moon in Gemini. Mercury will be in a square to Neptune, so we are going to be seeing that there is going to be more conversations revolving around division in this world. But I do have high hopes that as Venus goes through these transits, even in light of not really having a lot of support from any outer planets, we really are going to have an opportunity to focus more on love and balance. Perhaps we're reflecting on the past and where, past misunderstandings or past mishaps in financial situations or relationships or teaching us to be better, to do better by other people, to be more focused on preserving fairness, balance, equality, and be challenging this narrative that the world has to be a harsh world, harsh, scary, or destructive place. And then we're finally going to see Venus leave. She will be leaving, going into Scorpio, but not before re-triggering an opposition to the eclipse. So something else you'll see on December 3rd is while Venus is at 29 degrees, so it may feel like a critical turning point in relationships. It's reactivating the Aries point that we had. We had a solar eclipse in Aries in the spring, and you may feel like there is some relationship breakdown or disharmony or changes as a result of choosing yourself, starting somewhere fresh, choosing you, picking your own independence, your own freedom. And it's also bringing up that Venus star point. So if you guys remember last fall, we saw a Venus cazimi take place right in the last degrees of Libra, ushering in, potentially new future cycles that are going to be star points that are going to be in Libra. We're still hanging out in Scorpio for a little bit. But this can be showing us where relationships fail or we separate only if it wasn't meant to be, only if we were not meant to be with that person, if it was not balanced, if it was not fair. After all, I think so much of, Venus in Libra with the South Node is about really kind of like reflecting on like where we lose ourselves in relationships, or we become too overly complacent or overly dependent or too comfortable maybe, right? And, relationships thrive best when we are really able to kind of be ourselves and work on ourselves and heal ourselves to be able to be better versions of ourselves for, that other person. And then we're going to see on the 4th, Venus will enter into Scorpio. And that's a completely different vibe. I feel like Venus in Scorpio is like so complementary in a way to the South Node in Libra, because it does represent this change, release, transformation, or letting go of relationships. So those of you guys who have been playing the back and forth game in relationships or financial situations really all summer, you may find that right around the time that we're experiencing the Venus square Pluto around December 3rd, that could be another breaking point, separation point for certain relationships that have kind of already hit their expiration date. So that's really, Venus in Libra in a nutshell. Like I said, check out your guys' horoscopes for this month for November, or consider checking out your astro weather if you want the 12 signs. Let me know, how are you guys feeling with this? Are you as skeptical of this transit as I am? What do you guys think some of the blind spots might potentially be with, planets that are going to be in Pisces and Taurus? Is it going to be showing us where there are some unfair or unbalanced things taking place behind the scenes globally when it comes to values, relationships, food, resources? And how is this aspecting your own personal chart? Are you having a Venus return? Leave me your comments below. I would love to hear from you guys. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your week, and I will catch you back here on Thursday. Take care.